Hello and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Jie Xiaojun with Charlotte and our new friend Oliver. But actually, when I say our new friend, actually you're not our new friend. We're supposed to be old friends because you just told me you used to work for CCTV News before we were called CCTV News.
Indeed, I was one of the news readers back in '09. So, yeah.
How weird, and we didn't even realize that.
Small world.
And what do you do now?
So I was a physician. I trained as a physician, and now I work in software. I make software for hospitals. But most of that work takes place over the phone or at night. So during the day, I actually have a lot of time
You have
free.
flexible working hours.
Indeed, indeed.
I'm still wondering whether the topic that we've planned for the discussion would be that much relevant to your experience, because we're talking about stay-at-home parenting or parents. Mm-hmm. What is your situation like?
Well, you know, I was reading through some of the papers, and you know, there are pressures and there are stigmas, and you know, people's comments here and there that definitely you receive. But you know, in my opinion, is you have to kind of roll with the punches. You've made your decisions, and you have your priorities, and you know.
But how do we understand this term? I mean, stay-at-home parents. And are they supposed to be the 100% staying-at-home parents, or basically they take the major responsibility?
Well, I think they take the major responsibility. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but my friends that have children and just family and, you know, people I know with kids, it's a full-time job. If you really want to, you know, properly raise your kids and be there and be involved in their lives and their, you know, growing up, then it really does take, you know, the equivalent of a full-time job that you might do at an office.
I mean, full-time mothers, it's not anything new because we're so used to it and people don't discuss it. And now today we're talking about the other part, full-time daddies, full-time fathers. Because not long ago, remember we have a Chinese version of The Voice of China, and there was that contestant, a full-time mother, and she said, well, you know, I used to be on the stage performing for others, but, you know, for the considerations of the family's interest, for the benefits of my children, I decided to quit the stage to take up my family responsibility, so I became a full-time mother, and now since they're now grown-ups, and I decided to come back to the stage for my own dreams. So it seems very much accepted by the society, full-time mothers are okay. But these days, it seems to be something new to see these full-time fathers. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised. I mean, I think with the changing role of women in the workplace, and you know, just by numbers and time, there's going to be some give and take. Someone else will have to assume those very time-consuming and important duties of childcare, and who better to do that than another interested party, the father?
Very good theory, but why do you think this is still a newsy thing?
Well, I think, I mean, well, traditionally, I mean, if you look at, like, biology, if you look at the wild, you know, the role of the mother is to be the mother, and the father...
To be at home, right?
Right, to look after the young, basically, you know. And the male goes out and hunts and gathers and provides for the family because, you know, in the wild, you don't have breast pumps and things like this, you know. You can't. The mother has to be there to nurture and, you know, to feed her young. The father can't do that if you know, if it's an animal. So I think that's sort of where maybe our tradition for this comes from. But now, you know, we've got all kinds of options open.
You mentioned the sort of traditional roles, and people may adhere to those, but as people's opinions change and society's opinions change, I think people will become more accepting of it. Obviously, there's a practical aspect, and you make your peace with your choices. But, you know, I think things are changing, so it's becoming more accepted. You know, we were talking about some things in popular media where the father as the primary caretaker has become more prevalent, and not so much of an oddity or comedy thing, but more just something that's accepted.
Yeah, when I was back in the States, they were doing a lot of promos for a new show that's either just started or about to start on TV about these three dads, very handsome, you know, model-like, beefy dads with very young children, with infants. And that's the show.
But that's a movie.
Well, yeah, no, there are movies too, yeah. Okay. No, I mean, it's a theme that I think, you know, I think maybe because it's not sort of the course of nature, maybe we tend to look at it as sort of something that can be kind of funny or, comical. You have these, fathers who might have spent their whole lives working, and now all of a sudden they're at home with a child, and, what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, people might have different reasons to make that decision, saying, well, we are here because it's so much to do. If we do take care of our children properly, then you need to take care of their education, their daily life. You need someone to look after them every day. So apart from that, I guess there is also a very important reason these days, especially in the cities, they are now able to do it. When the salary of just one of them or one of the couple can support the living and education of the children of the family, then that's when we can talk about the possibility, the feasibility part of that decision.
Yeah, you mentioned it, and obviously with a large income, you could have a secondary caretaker like a nanny or so forth. But, I think a lot of people make that choice where, you want a parent there. I mean, every hour you spend with your kids is obviously to their benefit, and you can, transfer your values and your knowledge to them, which may or may not transfer as well if there's a secondary caretaker like a nanny.
That's a very good point, because, I guess we're not surprised to see we're not also familiar with this practice. You would invite your own parents. The grandparents would be the ones taking care of the kids in many cases, right? Because both of the young couple will have to work. But these days, there is a different consideration saying the bond, the connection between parents and children cannot be replaced by that between the children and the grandparents. It's just something different. And when they grow up, the connections, you may feel sorry about that if you're not there when they need you.
I do know some couples, though, that, they both have to work, and rather than hire a nanny, someone who's totally unrelated, they'd much rather have their children be with grandparents over nannies. Because the grandparents at least are related,
Okay.
You're part of the family.
Right.
Whereas a nanny counts as a complete outsider. So some people consciously make that decision. And then other people say, I don't want my kids raised by my parents. I don't want that job for my parents. I'm the parent. I don't want my parents involved. So then they choose to have a nanny.
But how do you decide who is going to be the full-time parent?
So it's interesting. I mean, we were faced with a decision similar to that, and that actually prompted our move to China. My wife had a wonderful opportunity come up, and so we decided as a family, we would support that opportunity, and it allowed us to move here and experience a new thing. But that also meant that I would have to change careers as well. So that put me in the position of making that choice.
What did you talk about in that discussion?
We talked about what's important, what are our values, and
Starting from values.
It's true. I mean, and then if you ask me, what could be a more valuable expenditure of my time, spending time with my children would be, basically unbeatable, I would say. So it wasn't too difficult for us to make that decision, but, there are obviously some hurdles and traditional roles that we'd have to address and overcome.
How old are your children?
My oldest is 5, and my youngest is 2 years old.
Okay.
So been more or less like a full-time father for the past 5 years.
Yeah,
right?
coordinating care and schools and everything. Now they're both at school full day. But at times it was a really great opportunity for me to spend more time with them on a daily basis.
Now, we mentioned this before in the discussion. We mentioned the difficulties, the challenges we might come across, especially, people talk and the social values are there and they are pretty strong. In the family, if the husband is not working well, the whole family lives on the salaries, income from the wife, then the guy will be labeled as the guy eating soft rice. You got that one?
Yeah, of course.
You want to explain this?
I've
What
never
does it
heard
mean,
this one.
soft rice, 吃软饭?
Ah.
It's like you're not standing on the solid ground, right? It's pretty heavy.
You're living it up or something.
No, more that you're not quite the man.
Okay.
Taking charge, etc.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Have you heard things like that?
Of course. I mean, that's kind of, my friends will joke with me, and I'm a pretty confident guy, so that's not a huge issue personally. But I can definitely see how it can really affect people.
Yes.
We've made a decision as a family, and we've made our priorities, but yet all these people from the outside are, commenting or, trying to stereotype.
But did you feel any
people.
pressure from?
Yeah, I think there was a
things
little
like, They were
pressure.
saying it jokingly, like a joke, but did you feel that pressure?
My friends, we joke about all kinds of stuff, so it wasn't any particular, it was probably the lighter things they would say to me. But,
Right.
No, but definitely, I mean, I think that sort of pressure exists, and it's something that, one of the things you need to come to grips with if, you're going to make these sort of decisions. Unfortunately, that's the way society is. It, may not be as accepting of one path versus the other. But, you make choices for your own family and yourselves. And,
Obviously, you are now taking it very, very nicely in a very nice way, but I guess that's not the case.
It can be
with,
difficult, I agree.
Yeah, with all other stay-at-home husbands or fathers, and it could be very difficult. We'll continue our discussion after the break. You're watching Crossover, and today we're talking about stay-at-home dads. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Crossover, and today we're talking about stay-at-home dads. There could be different reasons, and people might take it differently. What about this one? The role of a stay-at-home dad or full-time dad. How different is it from having a full-time mother?
I think it is a little different. I mean, again, we're falling into these stereotypes, but, women are usually seen as being more nurturing, and fathers may be more...
Distant.
Careless.
not careless if you're full-time.
Okay.
So,
Maybe more
and
removed,
I see it in our family as well. The mom tends, when a child is crying, the mom will comfort them, whereas, I will tend to see, hey, stop crying and let's, deal with the situation.
Let's play video games.
Right, exactly. Let's forget about crying. Let's go have some fun. But so it's a good point. I mean, are they exposed more to one style of parenting versus the other style of parenting as a result of this, different arrangement? It's possible. And
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any studies on.
That's an interesting thing, because I remember reading an article, or maybe we talked about it even on the show before,
Yes.
about in kindergartens, there is a very big gap between the number of female teachers and male teachers, and how some families will, or some parents will specifically find kindergartens where they're only women, or where there's a balance between men and women, because they want the sort of paternal and maternal vibe, basically.
Because people complain about, say, the feminine part of the children being in a position overpowering the part of, masculine part, because especially with boys. And maybe that's why, to a large extent, or to some extent, the society is starting to accept the role of, or encouraging the role of the full-time dads. How is it encouraged by, say, the employers? I'm not quite sure.
I'm not quite sure, actually. I think still it's you definitely find many more women working in kindergartens than you do men. At least in China, I know that's the case.
But these days we're now seeing, we have maternal leaves, but for guys, do they have...
I think the standard is
Paternity
maybe
leave?
about 12 weeks unpaid as opposed to several months paid, for obvious, medical and biological reasons.
Speaking of that, the States is really bad about maternity and paternity leave. Some places don't even give paternity leave. I know...
Or it's just unpaid.
Or it's just unpaid. So other places will give, a token amount of maternity leave, but after 6 weeks or something, you're expected to be back at work. I have friends like that. And Europe is really civilized in that regard. They have incredible benefits for parents, both men and women. They give great sort of maternity, paternity packages to employees, where you're paid, and it's great.
Now, what about this, Oliver? When you see your friends, your schoolmates, they're now all working maybe in these major companies, taking these major positions, and while you might still be working for different companies as, on the part-time basis, but do you make that comparisons, and do you feel bored sometimes to be a full-time dad?
So there's definitely comparisons made. I mean, everyone compares. You do need to be at peace with the decisions that you make. You can't have it all. I think there was an article in one of the U.S. magazines about how women cannot have a full-time career and then take care of their kids. But that's true of anybody. There's only a certain number of hours per day. There's only a certain number of effort that you can put forth. So you have to be at peace with, I'm spending my time doing something else that's very valuable. And if you make that decision that taking care of your kids and spending time with them is valuable, then it's much easier to say, okay, maybe I'm not the CEO or the whatever of this company, but I've had the opportunity to spend time with my children. So,
do you also set a timetable for yourself? Say, hey, when my kids are now maybe 10, 8 years old, I'll come out.
Sure, yeah, definitely. I mean, as time changes and as they don't want me anymore after a certain age, then I will have more time to pursue things that perhaps I would not have the opportunity to previously. So,
Charlotte, if you make a prediction, say in the future, when you do have, when you have a kid, and what would be the decision like?
I think it could go either way. I really do. I think it would just depend entirely on my career and my husband's career and who it would make more sense, to stay at home. But I definitely, there are a lot of, I know I have friends in the States who have just had a kid and they were looking into daycare because she's working from home now, but she's basically working full-time from home, so she can't really be there for her 9-month-old son. But it turns out that daycare for 1 year is roughly, what she makes.
after tax, right?
Yeah, in a year. So it's just the cost of daycare to then allow both parties to work is the same as having one person work and one person.
So
being
we've done all these calculations. Huh? Now let's take a look at some video clip and some pictures, and to see how the role of the full-time dads are being depicted in movies, and whether, because we do have some videos to share with you, whether a full-time dad is the right decision to make for some families. Take a look.
Oh, this is Doubtfire.
Oh, this is Mrs. Doubtfire.
Shoot! Get!
This has been dramatic in movies.
It is a movie, actually.
Yeah.
Brenda! What's up? You're home early, girlfriend. Having a birthday in the house.
So, this has been dramatic, but is it also something that we've talked about? This is just different ways of educating the kids, having fun with the kids. They might be going to that extreme to be having fun with lots of kids and family, but is it also a reflection of parts of the reality?
I think so, definitely. Obviously, if you were the man and choosing to be a more of a caretaker for your kids, if you don't enjoy spending time with kids, that wouldn't be a very useful decision. Robin Williams in this movie obviously is wonderful with kids, so it makes perfect sense for someone like him to make that
But I
choice,
dare say, I think that could either be the father or the mother, doing something crazy and sort of.
Depending on different personalities.
Absolutely, different families. Absolutely, I have friends that I could see doing this with kids.
It's an old movie.
It's a great film.
Such
a great
it's
film.
a great movie. But next one, take a look.
How was your day?
I lost my J.O.B.
Bye, baby. I'll be at the office.
Okay, well, just make sure you call us and let us know when you're coming back. We'll be here waiting, just the two of us.
Desperate times
Someone opened a decent daycare program around here. They make a killing.
call for desperate measures.
Daycare center, you and me. Can't men do anything that women can do?
No, we can't.
Welcome to Daddy Daycare. Don't panic, because they're like animals. They can smell fear. Okay, you're going to take these and go on with your bad self.
Daddy Daycare, that was also a good movie, but I just wonder whether that is practical in China, because, in China, all these kids are being taken very care of by parents or grandparents. When they fall on the ground. It will be, you know, helped by anyone nearby. So,
4 sets of hands, right? Yeah.
and all these kids are told to be disciplined, right? You have to follow the rules. It seems no one was doing that in the movie, so I guess it's not something that we're going to see in China.
Well, I mean, I think you're starting to see a sort of a varied approach, I think, with kids these days. You really, I see it just walking around the compound where I live, you know. Some kids you see with their grandparents, you know, it's still very traditional, and they fall over, and it's like, ooh, you know, whatever, bad ground, you know, for hurting your, yeah, no, really, or bad table,
Okay.
you know. But then you see other families walking around, grandparents as well, you know, a kid falls down, they go, ooh, better get up, and the kid gets up, and they keep going. So you are seeing a
little change,
variety, yeah.
Okay. Oliver?
I would contend that, you know, out of the watchful eyes of the parents and grandparents and being taken care of by these two guys, maybe any children would take the opportunity to express themselves in a, you know, more outward manner. Yes.
These are all these very expensive movie stars. All right. Now, people accept it. People accept the fact that these days in the society, we can have these full-time dads. And these days, people like yourself are willing to make that decision, are willing to take the role as a full-time dad. But whether or not they can do the job, that's another thing we can talk about. We'll talk about that after a short break. You're watching Crossover. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Crossover. Now, today we're talking about full-time dads. We might be willing to make that decision. We might be willing to take the role as a full-time dad, but whether or not we can do the job, it's a different issue. Actually, on the internet, there's some pictures to show you whether it's a right decision to have these full-time dads. Take a look.
Oh dear.
Oliver,
So there's something wrong
you're
with
going
this?
to do? Wow. We've also seen pictures on newspapers, on websites. It's, I guess, one of the parliament members, European Parliament members, from one of the Scandinavian countries. And she's a new mother, so when she went there to attend the conference, and she went there together with her baby, and she actually carried her baby at the conference. So once again, they were including the babies, the children, you know, in their daily life. And that's exactly what the father is doing, right? He's having fun, but he's carrying his baby, yeah?
No, in addition to sort of traditional gender roles changing, I mean, there has been a breakdown, or I wouldn't say breakdown, but change in the sort of boundaries between work and family life as well. So maybe this is an example of what you're saying there.
Right. But that's something you would do?
I don't know about this particular one.
Where did you take your kids,
Yeah.
and what is the craziest moment?
It's true. I mean, I think we tend to bring our kids around with us everywhere, you know, shopping and, you know, all sorts of things. I have heard stories of, you know, very high executives, and this was a woman in this case, who would do a very similar thing. They would bring their newborn or their young infant to a lot of very high-powered meetings.
Board conference,
Yeah,
board
with
meetings, right?
CEOs, and you know,
Okay.
the child was well behaved and it would sit on the side, but
Right.
she became known as the woman with the baby. But yeah,
Oh,
there's
that's cute.
some of the breakdown between those barriers, I think, is also
Ooh,
that's probably more typical there.
playing games.
Oh, and the kid's covered with food.
Is there a kid?
I've done that one for sure, definitely.
Is there a kid? Okay.
Oh, I love
You need
it.
a big trolley.
How funny.
Once again, this is also showing how different, I guess, our attitude might have towards taking care of a child in the family, the Western styles and the Chinese styles. And what is the biggest difference that you feel in taking care of kids?
In terms of Western versus
Chinese, yeah, Chinese,
I
Western.
mean, I think that, you know, in either side, there's obviously a lot of care and love for the children. I'm not sure that I would point to a single difference. You know,
Right,
it's very
right.
hard to see because every parenting style is going to be different. Can I
Yeah.
make any sort of generalities? I'm thinking
I
about
guess
that.
this is not something that we would see.
You know, it's funny. I'm talking to first-time parents when they've just had their second child. They will make comments about how they were so nervous with their first child, and by the time they had their second child, they were much more relaxed. And maybe, just from observing, from knowing, American parents and knowing Chinese parents, it could be maybe, and then this is also a generalization, but I think I maybe would say that American parents, more of them tend to be more relaxed. Having more than one child necessarily might help you achieve that state of being relaxed. More so than if you just have one.
Now, Oliver, here is a different question. I mean, you might be taking it fine, and do you think that would be a pressure to your wife?
It is definitely. I think she definitely feels it because she spends a lot of time at work and consequently does not have as much time to spend with the children. So I think she does feel more acutely this, a lack or a desire to spend more time with them.
When I say pressure for the wives, I'm talking about from a different perspective. It's because, we have this common understanding that women have a role to play in the society, men have a role to play in the society, so mostly people would accept the fact that women would take care of the family, while men would be taking care of the family, right? Mm-hmm. So, but in your family, in your case, you've made that decision that you stay home mostly and your wife?
I agree with you, though. I think there's a double standard. I mean, even though she is the primary breadwinner and she's, working hard all day, there's still that expectation that in addition to those full-time duties, she still has to be the mother and caretaker.
Exactly.
Even though,
she still has to
she
take
has to
care
do
of
both,
your emotions, because sometimes she might be worried, she might be concerned whether you would become kind of a sensitive. If not in your case, maybe in some other cases.
That's true. That's definitely true. I mean, I think that, that is true of all families, but, that compounding of roles is unfairly stacked, I think, for women that work, because not only do they work, but they also have that expectation to be a caretaker for the husbands and the kids as well. So
double pressure.
Yeah.
You're scared about that?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not, because I think as Oliver's made very clear, I think if every family is different and what you decide upon is different. So if you make your decision as a family, as a unit, then it works out well.
Not that there aren't frictions, of course.
No, of course not. Of course not. But but everyone's all on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, this also shows how open the Chinese society is becoming these days, because at least we're now talking about the fact that we're seeing more full-time dads in the society. But still, I guess, in the future,